This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, trade threat. Nova Scotia Christmas tree farmers fear fallout from Donald Trump's proposed tariff plan. Brainworm outbreak. The parasite is killing Cape Breton moose at a growing rate. And community well. Frustration over delays to a drinking water project in Musquodoboit Harbour.
It's weekend time and a nice one shaping up with some sunshine. Yeah, a few showers and flurries in the mix as well. We'll time it out for you with your full forecast coming up.
Good evening. With Christmas fast approaching, Nova Scotia fir tree farms say business is booming. But the looming threat of Trump's proposed tariff could change things, causing the industry to suffer next season. The CBC's Nicola Sagan has tonight's top story.
For Roger Trenum, this is like second nature, getting fir trees tied and ready to ship. Work he's done on his family tree farm since he was 12 years old.
This land was purchased by my family in '79, so as kids we were always doing it. Okay. Always.
Trenum sells his trees wholesale, some to local suppliers, but most are going south of the border. He says business hasn't always been great, but lately things have been different.
The demand of the trees was really good. Excellent. Can't get no better than the last couple of years. This year, really good.
There are more than 1,300 Christmas tree farms across the country, exporting millions of trees a year. Most of them go to the U.S., the 2022 trade valued at $68 million.
But hanging in the balance, Donald Trump's threat of a 25% tariff on goods coming from Canada and Mexico.
That 25% tariff would be huge for our industry.
Brennan says because the tariff wouldn't come into effect until January, Canadian farmers and exporters could lose millions of dollars next year, and American retailers might have supply issues.
If someone decides not to pay that tariff and not ship to the States, then that is going to impact whether or not they're going to have trees because they rely on Canada for their trees.
This economist says even the threat of such a high tax on imports could disrupt business.
This may be a negotiating tool, but trade, it's very volatile. Like trade is very sensitive to even threats.
Back in Nova Scotia, working late into the evening to get trees loaded on trucks for export, some in the industry are feeling more optimistic.
It would be disastrous if it happened, but I don't think it's going to happen.
The exporting company buys trees from farmers, shipping 45,000 to the U.S. this year. They say every year brings a new challenge, so they hope to ride it out and take things as they come. Nicola Sagan, CBC News, Guysborough, Nova Scotia.
The Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board has approved a $500 million federal bailout of Nova Scotia Power. It will still mean a rate increase for customers, but not the big jump NSP would have asked for without Ottawa's aid. Without the loan guarantee from Ottawa, there would have been an average rate increase of just over 19%. However, even with the bailout, customers will still pay 2.4% more next year when ratepayers help the utility pay the first $42 million installment on the 28-year loan. Nova Scotia Power says it needs the money to cover the higher cost of fuel. That rate increase still hasn't been approved. The UARB is expected to determine that in the new year. It's been almost 5 years since a gunman went on a deadly rampage through central Nova Scotia, killing 22 people. The committee, set up to ensure the lessons learned from that tragedy aren't soon forgotten, has released its first annual report. The Progress Monitoring Committee has been given the job of ensuring the 130 recommendations that came from the Mass Casualty Commission don't languish. Committee Chair Myra Freeman says the 3 recent cases of intimate partner violence in the province, in which 3 men each killed their partner, shows how important the committee's work is.
What we continue to witness in our province dramatically and tragically reinforces the importance of our task. It once again underscores why it's so important that we monitor progress and provide the public with updates on what we are hearing from the governments of Nova Scotia, the Government of Canada, the RCMP, on actions taken to respond to the Mass Casualty Commission's final report.
Freeman says when the committee meets again next month, the focus will be on the RCMP and how it's implementing recommendations from the Mass Casualty Commission. A lobster dealer in southwest Nova Scotia and his son have been charged with intimidating a buyer whose home was shot up last weekend. It's the latest in a number of allegations against the father related to threats and intimidation. Michael Gorman reports.
Eric David Thibault and his son Zachary David Thibault were in custody and appeared briefly today in a Yarmouth provincial courtroom. The charges stem from an alleged encounter 2 days ago with a lobster buyer near Metagan. His home was shot at overnight Saturday, an attack he believes was linked to organized criminals involved in purchasing illegally caught lobster. The charges against the Thibaults do not relate to the shooting, but are instead connected to an incident Wednesday. According to RCMP and court records, the two men are accused of approaching the lobster buyer near his home and threatening him. A Crown prosecutor indicated today he will seek to have Eric Thibault's bail revoked on earlier charges still pending in the court system. Records show he was charged with intimidation last December, accused of threatening a lobster fisherman who was seeking to change buyers. A month later, he was charged with 3 counts of witness intimidation involving 2 people at the harbor in Metagan. Zachary Thibault faces additional charges related to the lobster buyer. He's accused of threatening to kill him earlier this year, trying to extort him, intimidating him into not buying lobster from a certain fisherman, and harassing him. Eric and Zachary Thibault are scheduled to be back in a Yarmouth courtroom on Monday. Michael Gorman, CBC News, Halifax.
Ryan, as forecasted, a messy system rolled in last night.
Yeah, it certainly was. And some wet flakes even down towards the Halifax area, accumulating snow in northern areas of the province, but that eventual change to rain. And thankfully, not as impactful here as it was for our friends in New Brunswick, who are still dealing with thousands of outages from the heavy, wet snow on the power lines there. Across Nova Scotia, primarily a rain event. And yes, you can see much needed rain. That South Shore region that's been so dry picked up a nice soaking there, a little less towards the north and east, but yeah, overall a pretty good soaking for all, and that low continuing to move off to the north, and a quieter weekend, but not completely uneventful. For Saturday, we're going to be watching this trough moving west to east across the province, moving into the Tri-County area in the west Saturday morning, and then into the midday time period, moving into central areas. If you're in Cape Breton, most of the day is going to be, yes, precip free, but into the afternoon, we'll look at a chance for some showers and some wet flakes moving in as that trough does move in from west to east. That kicks out Saturday evening, and we're looking at a quieter Sunday with a mix of sun and cloud. A couple of isolated flurries possible, maybe some grapple mixing in on Sunday afternoon, but overall very, very quiet. Chilly. The big 7-day forecast trend. We'll talk about that coming up.
That's the trade-off for some sun, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
A disoriented moose caught on camera in Cape Breton is causing concern for the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables. An outbreak of brainworm is killing moose on the island at a growing rate. Kyle Moore has the story.
A moose staggering with its head tilted to one side, walking down a dirt road towards a vehicle, seemingly not knowing its surroundings, is tough to watch. This video was taken between Waikagama and Port Hastings. It's typical behavior for moose impacted by brainworm.
Seemingly is 100% fatal for moose. And so, yeah, it's a concern. On the mainland of Nova Scotia, where the moose population has been listed as endangered for quite some time, we consider brainworm to be one of the top threats to the species.
Andrew Boyne says the number of moose impacted on the island has been on the rise since the spring, with more than a dozen tested for the parasite so far. He says the growing deer population is one of the main reasons for the outbreak.
It became clear that numbers were high, and it appeared we were almost getting a moose a week. And it had me feeling pretty anxious, actually, because, like I say, we don't know what the solution is to solve that particular threat to the population of moose.
The infection is typically spread when a deer accidentally eats an infected snail or slug. The parasites are then coughed up or found in deer droppings. Then the worms can accidentally be eaten by moose.
With moose, they're not able to shed the parasite the same way that a deer can. And so in a deer, that parasite load stays low. The parasite doesn't actually get into the brain. With a moose, though, they can't shed the parasite, and the parasite actually gets through the brain membrane and actually gets into the brain and causes neurological damage. So the first sign you'll see is of a moose behaving erratically.
Moose hunting in Cape Breton has been suspended for 3 years after the population dropped from about 1,500 to 835. Kyle Moore, CBC News, Sydney.
The first case of a deadly oyster disease has been detected in Nova Scotia. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says that dermo was recently found in oyster samples collected in Mirrabel and Pictou County. While dermo is highly infectious and deadly among oysters, it does not pose risks to humans.
So it's still healthy to be buying oysters. And of course, we'll be a little bit biased and say we hope you do enjoy some Nova Scotia oysters in the holiday season. But yeah, it's not something to be concerned about when you're at your your parties and superstores and restaurants looking for to enjoy some oysters this holiday season.
This is the second confirmed case of dermo in Canada, the first being in New Brunswick last week. StatsCan has released new survey data on the most challenging obstacles Nova Scotia businesses expect to face in the coming months. Recruiting skilled employees and rising input costs were the most widely reported challenges. Those at construction management company WM Ferris Group say finding skilled employees is an issue across the industry.
It's very hard to find skilled bricklayers in our marketplace anymore. Major contractors like form workers, formwork companies, these are all major components of our industry today, and the lack thereof labor is creating, increasing costs and delays to the production.
Agriculture, forestry, and restaurant industry businesses were more likely to expect rising input costs. That would be their top challenge. For years, a Musquedominant Harbour group has been working to provide drinking water from an aquifer beneath the village. But as the CBC's Luke Ettinger reports, some are growing frustrated with the project's delays.
We have a tank, we have the filtering system, and it comes into this dispenser.
In April, a grand opening was held for a solar-powered community well in Musquedominant Harbour. But no residents have been able to fill up personal jugs amid dry wells as a result of drought.
But as it turned out, the draw on the well from one solar panel was not enough. And so we had to get another one.
Bradley said an inverter and additional batteries will be installed in the spring because the building is not winterized. But the well was promised to be a lifeline during extended power outages, and many happen during colder months.
The fact that, part of this grandiose project was to provide water in emergency situations, it won't happen.
Mannion and others question the use of taxpayer dollars. In 2021, the cooperative received $14,500 from Farm Credit Canada for the well, in addition to $9,000 collected through the area rate. Still a lot cheaper than previous estimates to pipe water into village homes.
That's a cost that the municipality bears that then has to pass on to the residents. So there's resistance to that at times, but one of the first steps can be just these centralized water units that don't distribute water to every household, but are just like a pump and fill station for when you have times of drought and there's no water in your own well.
Kurlik says 40% of households rely on private wells in Nova Scotia, and the effects of drought are becoming more common. Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada data shows there has been continued dryness over the last 6 months, and it intensified in the fall.
It's unheard of that this time of year that we would have dug wells going dry or needing to be filled or having people to buy water. But there's a lot of angst in the community right now.
I just wish that people in the community would be interested in participating in these processes and understanding some of the frustrations that we've all had in trying to bring this project to complete fruition for everybody's benefit.
Mannion said that is something he's tried to do without success. Luke Ettinger, CBC News, Musquedominant Harbour.
A live look at Dartmouth on this Friday evening. Ryan is up next with his full weather forecast. We're back in a few minutes. Welcome back. Municipal leaders in Nova Scotia are repeating their call for the province to handle coastal protection. The Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities held its annual conference in Halifax today. Multiple speakers said local governments cannot and should not draw up their own rules. The CBC's Haley Ryan has more.
This is dead wrong. It's been wrong from the first, and it should be corrected.
Warden Robert Parker of the municipality of Pictou County says the provincial government has to take ownership of coastal protection. He was one of multiple people with that message on Friday during the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities annual conference. The PC government scrapped legislation earlier this year that would have brought in province-wide rules.
They have to come up with a uniform around this province. It should not be mishmash, and you can't say, well, some coasts are different than others. Well, some highways are different than others, but we have uniform laws on our roads.
The NSFM hired a coordinator this summer to help guide municipalities as they create their own coastal bylaws.
We shouldn't have to reinvent that wheel in any way, shape, or form. The work has been done.
Coordinator Gordon Smith says he's heard loud and clear that municipalities are worried about the cost of creating those rules.
So certainly I'll be bringing that up with the province to say, like, we had our meeting and this is what we heard from the room there, was that people are still advocating for this.
Smith says the province has hired a consultant to create draft template bylaws that municipalities can use for free. The province is also offering technical experts and some funding streams for climate change and coastal projects.
You know, having the funding, you may as well do it. Like, do it and make sure that it's standard. Can you imagine 49 municipal units, each having their own coastal protection plan? It doesn't make any sense. So, but we are going to work with the province in the meantime because we can't just let it drop.
Mood says if the PC government refuses to change course and proclaim the act, the province should cover every municipal penny spent on the issue. Haley Ryan, CBC News, Halifax.
That is not here.
That is not here. This is Bracebridge, Ontario, and this is just the beginning of what is going to be a very, very snowy weekend for many folks around the Great Lakes. This area in particular, north of Toronto, is going to be very, very hard hit as cold air moves over top of the Great Lakes, and that cold Arctic air, of course, the Great Lakes still open, right? Mm-hmm, there's no ice. And so that temperature difference, that's what sparks the snow squalls. And it is going to be, an epic weekend.
How much?
There. Up to 100 centimeters locally.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
I know there are snow lovers out there.
Yeah,
but it's too much.
5 to 10 centimeters an hour. And so there's no surprise that there are widespread snow squall watches and warnings in place. Have a look at the map you can see here across the Great Lakes. And even up towards Lake Superior as well, and then down into southern Ontario. So that is what it looks like in terms of the watches and warnings. Look at the models, and again, this is, you can just see where those bands are coming from west to east. Boy, the upper New York State going to get hit, as well as, of course, our friends in Ontario. And again, local amounts in the Environment Canada warnings mentioning near 100 centimeters of snow by the end of Sunday. And it's all thanks to this very, very cold Arctic air. We've been talking about it all week, how cold it's been out west. Well, that cold air is now moving over top of the Great Lakes, and that is what's sparking up the flurries and the squalls, and that's colder air may spark a few flurries for us into the Sunday time period as well. We're watching this low pressure system move off into the north and east. Arctic high moving in, and let's have a look at where we are temperature-wise. Regina at -21, Winnipeg at -17, Whitehorse at -20, Vancouver just at 6, and that colder air, again, is going to continue to basically be stalled over the eastern parts of North America through next week, even into next weekend. Have a look at where we are right now. In fact, for temperatures tonight, we'll be looking at that first. Temperatures between -2 and +2 for the most part, but most of us are going to be dipping below the freezing mark unless you're right along the coastline tonight. Those westerly winds will become light, thankfully. And as we walk you through the timeline here, there are those few isolated showers and flurries as we move through tonight. let's stop tomorrow morning around 6 a.m. and have a look at the Digby, Yarmouth, Shelburne areas. These are the areas we're going to be talking about the potential for a few showers and flurries moving in first, and then into the lunchtime hour, moving into the Halifax area as this weak trough moves through the region, but it will be enough to get some lift going, and we'll be watching for those potential showers and flurries to move through into the afternoon into Cape Breton. And you can see the clear out behind, and so it will be a pretty brief burst of precip that does move through from west to east. Temperatures across Cape Breton tomorrow ranging between 4 and 5 degrees, southwest winds. A similar story, Antigonish down into Guysborough County and Sherbrooke, and then into the central parts of the province. Temperatures again 4 or 5 degrees for the most part. We'll see that chance for showers and flurries midday here, and then into the west, and looking at that morning risk for some showers and flurries. Westerly winds near 20, some gusts upwards of 30 kilometers per hour perhaps, and that low or that little trough will move its way out. There's the trough as of Saturday evening. Out it goes. And then in this cooler air in behind, we will again bring the possibility of some showers and flurries developing mainly along the Bay of Fundy by the looks of things right now, up into the Colchester-Cumberland area, the valley, down towards Digby and Yarmouth. We could see a few flurries on Sunday afternoon. That's going to be our greatest risk. But overall, Sunday is looking quiet with a mix of sun and cloud, and temperatures right around 3-4 degrees. And the winds don't look too breezy on Sunday as well. Southwest 10 to 20, that is. And so we're looking at, pretty good weekend overall. Now, next week, that colder air continues to creep its way in through Monday into Tuesday and Wednesday. Temperatures kind of ticking down, overnight lows, daytime highs. A fair amount of sunshine for those 3 days, which is great, and we'll take that. If you've got some travel plans on Thursday, that's going to be a day that you're going to want to make sure you keep an eye on how the forecast progresses over the next few days. We've got cold temps in place. That system moves in. It looks like at the very least it is set to begin as snow, perhaps a change to rain. It's all about the timing and the track. We'll keep you posted on that in the coming days, Amy.
Yes, one to watch. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Coming up, I'll speak to the Aquaculture Association about the impact of dermo disease on Nova Scotia oysters. Federal food safety officials say they have confirmed the first case of dermo disease in oysters from Nova Scotia. The disease, detected in samples from Miragamish in Pictou County, can kill oysters but poses no health risk to humans. Jeff Bishop is Executive Director of the Aquaculture Association of Nova Scotia. So what has been the reaction from oyster farmers in this province after hearing about the discovery of dermo?
Yeah, it's early days, Amy. Just a few days since the confirmation of the find, and so folks are doing what a lot of folks do when an issue like this comes up with their livelihood. They're looking for answers and trying to find out more and as much as they can about what exactly dermo is, because it is relatively new, with this just being the second find in Canada in history.
Well, talk to me a bit about what this disease can do to oyster stocks.
Right, so it's caused by a parasite with a Latin name I'll try, called Perkinsus marinus, so it's a little one-celled organism that causes the disease itself, and basically it causes the oysters just not to be healthy, and so they don't grow properly within the environment, whether it's wild caught or wild oysters, or ones that, like ours in aquaculture, that we are growing in cages.
Now, CFIA says mortality rates are typically 50 to 70%. That's got to be a big number and a big fear for folks.
It absolutely is, and so that's the one of those factors that folks are really concerned about. It's not just a small amount when it can be found to be affecting a population, because, as you say, a 50 or 75% loss of a population is one that's sort of insurmountable when you're raising oysters to be sold, to be put on the market.
And how long does it take from seed to market? It's several years, correct?
Yes, yeah, it depends on a number of factors, how big you start with the seed that you have and putting them in cages or seeding the ground area of a lease. But yeah, typically 4 to 5 years. And it depends on other things like water temperature as well in the area.
Of course, the holidays are a big time for buying and consuming oysters. What do you say to folks who might maybe shy away from them because they've heard about the case of dermo?
Yeah, it's important for folks to know that dermo is not a food safety concern for humans whatsoever. You can consume oysters that they're found in waters or populations that are infected with dermo, and it will have no impact on you whatsoever. And so it's still healthy to be buying oysters. And of course, we'll be a little bit biased and say we hope you do enjoy some Nova Scotia oysters in the holiday season. But yeah, it's not something to be concerned about when you're at your parties and superstores and restaurants looking for to enjoy some oysters this holiday season.
Well, is there any help by way of insurance or government assistance for farmers who might be impacted if more cases are found?
Yeah, as I say, it's really early days, Amy, and so that's discussions that we're having with our partners in the provincial and federal governments. Crop insurance, like our terrestrial farmers, like they have, isn't as common amongst sea farmers. And so it's another area because of different impacts like this, like climate effects and weather effects that we're seeing that are affecting aquaculture. It's an area we've been looking at of looking for opportunities for folks to potentially buy insurance or invest in insurance for their crops, their oysters or finfish that they may have as well. So it's not something that's very common here, but something we've been talking about in recent years.
Now, MSX is another disease that was discovered in PEI this past summer, and that parasite wiped out oyster production in the Bredor Lake. What lessons can be learned from those experiences?
Yeah, there's it's some unfortunate lessons, I guess. And MSX is an interesting parasite on its own as well. It's been known up and down the eastern seaboard of the United States, and as you say, here in Nova Scotia and Cape Breton for over 20 years. But there's not a lot known about MSX specifically in the way that the disease is moved. There's some theories, everything from oysters being brought from different places, maybe down along the eastern seaboard years ago, to bilge water from boats traveling in the area that could have been part of it, but nothing definitive. So lots of research opportunities, especially related to MSX and how we can potentially make changes to what we do on activities that could be potentially spreading, or even learning how are there opportunities for us to be growing oyster populations in areas that do have dermo or MSX, simply by making changes to the way that the gear that we're using, for example, is one thing that we're looking at.
All right, Mr.
ahead.
Bishop, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. We do appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Amy. I appreciate it.
Coming up, British lawmakers are facing a crucial vote on legalizing assisted dying in England and Wales. And 5 years after being gutted by fire, the historic Notre Dame Cathedral of Paris is set to reopen. Welcome back. British lawmakers have approved in principle a bill allowing assisted dying in England and Wales. Under its terms, mentally competent adults who have 6 months or less to live could choose to end their lives with medical help. The vote followed 5 hours of intense debate. The bill must pass through both the lower and upper chambers of Parliament before becoming law. Supporters of the bill celebrated outside the Parliament building when the result was announced. But as Crystal Gamansing tells us, not everyone is pleased with the outcome.
The ayes to the right, 330. The noes to the left, 275. The ayes have it, and look!
This bill was considered once-in-a-generation legislation because of the monumental impact it could have on society. This issue has been contentious with a lot of emotion on both sides. And in fact, the Labour MP who put the bill forward made a point when the debate started in the House of Commons saying that this was a complex issue. But complex issues is exactly what MPs are supposed to deal with. There has been a lot of emotion inside the House of Commons, but also outside. Both sides were here today trying to make their voices heard. Those opposed to the legislation made a point of saying they saw it as a slippery slope. In fact, they are worried about it progressing to the sort of legislation there is in Canada. I heard from a number of individuals, one of them, Anna Laundrie. She talked about the fact that she's disabled, and until that disabled people have access to what they need, they could fear being a burden and coerced into using this legislation down the line.
In this country, we don't have the support as disabled people to live. It can take people 2 years to get a wheelchair. So when you're looking at offering them the chance to die within 2 weeks, that is just coercive control. And this bill, like many others in countries that have been passed, is likely to be expanded. And I think we did see public opinion in the last week or two really turn in favor of us. I wonder if we were to have this vote next week, whether the result would have been different. But we're going to keep fighting. We've got several more rounds of review, and we'll be back to convince the rather small margin of MPs to switch their vote.
Another individual, 28-year-old Rensa Gaunt, talked about the Canadian system, fearing that eventually it will move towards that system. Right now, here in the UK, as the legislation is written, it will only be for adults in England and Wales who are over the age of 18 and terminally ill. But there is a lot of fear around what will come in a year, in a month, in 6 years when it comes to this legislation. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
The historic Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris opens next week, 5 years after being gutted by fire. Today, it welcomed the people who restored it. The CBC's Heather Gillis reports.
An enduring symbol of Paris, Notre Dame, now restored. French President Emmanuel Macron got a glimpse of the iconic Gothic cathedral, reconstructed.
Le choc de la réouverture.
Saying he believes the shock of Notre Dame reopening will be as strong as the shock of the fire and inspire hope. Reborn from the ashes of that devastating fire in 2019, which took just hours to destroy key parts of the 800-year-old church, one of the most visited monuments in Paris. The spire smashing through timbers spanning its roof, shattering French hearts and shocking the world. 5.5 years later, it's reopening, rebuilt using medieval methods, wood from centuries-old oak, stained glass, buttresses and gargoyles restored too, costing more than $1 billion Canadian. Macron thanked about 1,000 craftsmen and women for their meticulous work, calling it the project of a century. We owe this metamorphosis to you, he said, transforming coal into art, calling the fire a national wound. These restoration workers, its remedy. Parisians can't wait to see inside, including this Notre Dame superfan. Forged after the fire, the craftspeople who restored the cathedral formed a choir. Now they're practicing for a performance following the reopening. It allows them to find closure, says this engineer, after a strenuous job, one he hopes is ending on a good note. Notre Dame's opening ceremony will happen next weekend, followed by days of special masses to celebrate. It will reopen to the public on December 8th. Heather Gillis, CBC News, Toronto.
Scurvy is something usually found in history books, but in the community of L'Orange, Saskatchewan, well, it's currently grappling with the disease. More than 24 cases are linked to malnutrition and the high cost of food. The CBC's Alexander Silberman reports.
L'Orange is the hub of Saskatchewan's north, a small town with long winters and vast lakes, struggling with the challenges of isolation and the diseases that come with it, including scurvy.
Susan, do you want to get tea?
At the food bank, volunteers deliver hampers to 50 families each week. They're seeing a growing number of people struggling to put food on the table.
Most weeks we will fill up what we can do and then have to turn people away.
Food insecurity is so dire, doctors at this clinic started noticing symptoms of the centuries-old disease. They later diagnosed 27 cases of scurvy. So rare today, single cases are often the focus of entire studies.
Vitamin C is just sort of a canary in the coal mine, if you will, in terms of what else people might be nutrient deficient in.
The cases have people pointing to high grocery prices. At stores like this one, high transport costs mean fresh fruits and vegetables are often limited and more expensive. And for many, that's putting healthy food increasingly out of reach.
It's crazy. You only got one grocery store, one large grocery store. So, I mean, what do you do?
I took this picture myself here. Butterball turkey, 21 pounds, $168.
$168 for turkey.
Yeah.
Jordan McPhail represents Northwest Saskatchewan in the provincial legislature. He's hearing from people struggling to afford healthy food, especially in the most remote communities.
Families are making impossible decisions. They're trying to feed their families as most nutritious diet as they can, but they're not able to get the fresh produce.
And actual vitamin C tablets.
The easiest treatment, says Irvin, is these low-cost vitamins. But the scurvy cases highlight the need for sustainable solutions, like harvesting traditional foods high in nutrients.
I think the answer is really like, what does the community value and what does the community want to see on their plate?
A challenge Spring expects will grow as climate change could further impact northern foods. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, L'Orange, Saskatchewan.
A Montreal shopping mall and office complex is under fire for using a popular children's song to keep away homeless people. Quibina Odoro has more on the controversy surrounding the use of the song Baby Shark.
This Montreal mall is hoping that this notorious earworm will help keep people they consider unwelcome guests away. Baby Shark is playing in the parking garage and it's even playing in the stairwell.
It represents something in people's mind in terms of torturing, like mentally, whether it's that song or any other one. I mean, just the measure itself of creating a non-welcoming environment for people and not making it safe for them anymore to stay, it is not a good solution long term.
With shelters having to turn more and more people away, Patrice Quintal says he turns to malls or metro stations to stay warm, but it's becoming harder.
They hire the security guards everywhere, so we can't go there. They treat us like garbage.
In a statement, Movement Desjardins, which owns the mall, says they started playing the music about a year ago because there are problems in some areas. Since then, they have noticed an improvement, but they insist their goal is not to be coercive, but supportive.
The fact that they have social worker is definitely a step in the good direction. The question is more like, why are they not able to accompany those people without having to put music?
The situation at Complex Desjardins is only the latest case of what groups say are measures to push vulnerable people out of public spaces. Montreal's Transit Authority is closing this entrance to the Atwater metro station for the winter. It's a measure to prevent people from sleeping here.
We're not a shelter. We don't have any toilets. We don't have the resource to operate a shelter. We cannot fool ourselves by thinking the metro can shelter people, because this is not the case. This is not our mandate, and we need to develop more resource as a society.
I don't think anyone wishes to sleep in the metro station, but the reality is that there's no alternative. If it's raining, if it's snowing, if it's super cold outside, you try to find a place that's warm, and right now it's the metro stations that are one of the last spots. So it's really important that they stay open.
The city of Montreal also sent us a statement. It says what the Complexe Desjardins is doing is questionable. And it adds that this is proof of why Ottawa and Quebec need to come to an agreement to free up $100 million in funding to deal with the homelessness crisis. Meanwhile, the Old Brewery Mission says that it's waiting on answers from the city too. It's waiting on the outcome from a committee that was formed earlier this year to look at local solutions to deal with the crisis. So far, the city says no announcement is planned.
That's the CBC's Kwabena Odoro in Montreal. Well, retailers took a deep breath today, hoping and bracing for crowds of Black Friday shoppers to jumpstart holiday sales. There were the traditional pre-dawn openings. This one was in the aptly named city of Commerce, California. In Canada, analysts suspect the coming GST holiday might delay some Christmas spending, and many so-called Black Friday sales started earlier. Still, a Retail Council of Canada survey found 40% of respondents planned shopping for today. The Professional Women's Hockey League opens its second season this weekend. All 6 teams are in action, and it will be all unfolding amid an air of optimism. The CBC's Sarah Levitt has the story.
New names and jerseys, plus a high-profile video game treatment for EA Sports. And she gets it! And Canadian broadcast partners for every single one of the games secured. The Professional Women's Hockey League is back for its sophomore year with season openers Saturday. And the league is trying to live up to the hype of its highly successful first year.
Record after record, step after step, glass ceiling after glass ceiling being shattered, and it doesn't stop here.
It's emotional to think about where the games come from, where we've come to. We have the ability now for many, many young girls around the world to not see a world that doesn't have professional women's hockey. I think it changes everything.
And those young girls are hyped up. At Bourget College High School just outside of Montreal, these 15 to 18-year-olds are coached by a hockey legend. 3-time Olympic medalist Mélodie Daoud decided to retire after playing in the PWHL's inaugural season. Now she coaches the next generation.
They do want to continue, and obviously with the new league, it's something that the girls are looking forward to and hoping and dreaming about it.
Just ask 15-year-old Madison Lévesque, recently named to Quebec's under-18 girls team. It's the first year she's not playing on a boys team.
Every generation before us always wished for a league like this one, and yeah, I think it's great for us.
And do you want to play in it?
Yes, for sure, yeah.
Not only is there a league, there are plans to expand. Cities are clamoring for a chance. More than 25 proposals have already been sent in.
I think the opportunities that are the result of this league are massive.
As the puck drops on season 2, the key is continuing the momentum and keeping fans entertained. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
That big exhale. The weekend's here, right?
That's right. Yeah, and it's been a week
I know.
for sure.
It's been a busy one.
Yeah. So let's first, before we get to the weekend forecast, in case you're just joining us, let's talk about our viewer picture of the day. And a beautiful one indeed. Have a look at this. We're going to zoom in on Amherst Shore. Now, this is a spot we've featured before from Diane.
Oh, wow.
And Diane Irwin said this was a beautiful way to start the day yesterday. The first sunrise she had seen in weeks.
No kidding.
And it also happened to be her 70th birthday.
Oh,
So
happy birthday,
happy
Diane.
birthday to Diane. And thanks, as always, Diane, for sharing. Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. Keep them coming. And this weekend, we will see the sunshine in the mix. So I do say that there will likely be a few picks in Ryan's picks inbox for tomorrow or for Monday morning. Have a look at the forecast tomorrow. 4 or 5 degrees. Winds are going to be from the west tomorrow, 20 to 30, except in Cape Breton, a bit more southwesterly. And it's going to be that trough that we're going to be seeing roll across the province from west to east, bringing that chance for showers and flurries. For Sunday, we're looking at temperatures ranging between around 2 and 4 for most of us, and 3 and 4 in fact. And we'll be looking at that mix of sun and cloud with a chance for some flakes. There's that trough for Saturday moving through. And then for Sunday, looking at just an isolated risk of a flurry, primarily into the afternoon and evening as, again, just a little bit unsettled. Now, into the Monday time period, we're looking at quiet weather to continue, mix of sun and cloud. Tuesday, chance for flurries back on tap. Wednesday, highs right near the freezing mark. Pretty much the case on Tuesday as well. And then keeping an eye on that Thursday system, which does look set to bring at least some snow in the mix based on the current timing. So we'll keep you posted.
We sure will. All right, well, all kinds of organizations hold Christmas events. Here's what an architectural society is doing in London. Appropriately, it's exhibiting a gingerbread city with the architects on hand. There's everything from towers and trains to mansions and Santa's sleighs. The theme is environmental, exploring how buildings can be reused, reducing carbon-intensive demolition and construction.
Forget reusing these ones as dessert, though. The dough and icing were mixed not for taste, but to be, in the designer's words, structurally sound.
Not so tasty.
Yeah.
Well, that is it for us tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.